Julia had no idea what to expect, but as soon as things started she was fascinated. It wasn't an out-of-body experience or anything, but Julia did feel a bit surreal and detached from herself, and everything seemed to go quiet. Her diaper started to get really warm and she felt the warmth slowly spread between her legs and over her diaper. She sensed a small puddle of wetness right between her legs. She had really needed to go, so Julia stood there and let herself finish. After she stopped, she sensed the warmth continue to spread over a larger area of the diaper. The small puddle of liquid disappeared as it was absorbed into the diaper. The detached sensation started to fade and Julia became fully aware that she was standing on a sidewalk just as she had been a moment before. That wasn't so bad, I guess, Julia told herself after a minute or so. I guess I can handle that, which is a good thing, seeing how I have a week of that to look forward to. Julia looked down at her pants to see if there were any wet spots, but there weren't. She ran her hands over her backside to double-check, but didn't feel any wet spots. She noticed that while the diaper still felt warm, it seemed to get drier by the minute. Julia decided that wetting her pants wasn't going to be as big of a deal as she had feared just a couple of minutes ago. She started walking again. Her diaper did feel noticeably heavier and it seemed to have expanded and become even bulkier between her legs. By the time she got home, the diaper felt almost the same as when it was dry, just warmer and bigger. When she walked in the front door, she saw her mother in the kitchen getting dinner ready. She knew Dad was home because she had seen his car in the driveway, but he wasn't in the kitchen. Julia said hello to her mother. Hey Julia. You're back a bit early, dinner won't be ready for another half hour or so. I know, said Julia. She almost started to say that she came home early because she had to go to the bathroom, but then she remembered what her mother had said earlier. She knew she needed to be changed, but she didn't want to ask because she knew what that meant. Luckily for Julia, Shirley was a smart one. She thought for a second, why would Julia come home early, and quickly put two and two together. Well, I just need to do a couple more things and then dinner will just need to cook for a bit. Why don't you take your pants off again, so I can check your diaper? Shirley said in a very matter-of-fact tone. Julia couldn't believe how her mother could say something like that, like it was no big deal. So Julia headed off to her room. On the way there she heard her dad in the backyard mowing the grass. When Julia got to her room she stepped over to her full-length mirror and took a look at herself. The shirt she was wearing came down just below her belly button, which left her a full view of the diaper. Most of the diaper was still white, but the part between her legs had just a slight yellow tint that could be seen through the plastic lining. She turned around and looked at her bottom and saw that part of the diaper there was also wet. She turned back around and took a longer look at herself. Her mother had said she looked cute, but Julia wasn't sure she totally agreed. Her slim waist and flat stomach looked fine, but the diaper made her rear look a lot bigger than it was. Still, from the front she didn't look all that bad. She could see what her mother meant by cute too. She did look cute, just like somebody at Halloween dressed up like a baby. All she needed was some pigtails and a pacifier. The big difference, she told herself, was that her diaper was not part of a costume, it was wet, and she was, hopefully, about to be changed into a dry one. She started feeling a bit silly staring at herself standing around in a wet diaper, so she walked back to the kitchen. Julia walked to the kitchen and watched as Shirley put the lid on a large pot and wiped off her hands. Shirley turned and saw that Julia was on the other side of the counter, standing and looking at her. She walked over to the other side of the counter and looked at her daughter. Oh good, you took your pants off already. Now let's see how you're doing. And with that she placed her hand on Julia's lower bottom and began feeling her diaper. Well, looks like somebody wet their diaper finally. Good, Shirley said as she looked at the front of her Julia's diaper. I'd say you are ready for a change. Let's take care of that while the food is cooking. Julia wondered what her mother meant when she said good. So she asked, Well, I was a bit worried that you might try to hold it too long or something since you were at Becky's. You really don't want to do that, cause you can end up with a bladder infection or something. Plus, if you hold back too long and pee too much, your diaper might leak. Just do like you did, and make sure you go when you need to. Now let's get you changed. I better remember that, Julia told herself. The two of them walked back to Julia's room. Julia walked up to the changing table and leaned against it. Don't just stand there, hop up, Shirley said as she walked over. Julia hopped onto the changing table and lay down. Shirley leaned over and pushed the bottom of Julia's shirt up a bit to keep it out of the way. Then she reached under the table and grabbed the box of wipes and a clean diaper. She set the box of wipes on the mattress and placed the diaper on Julia's chest. Julia started thinking to herself, well, this is going to be the first of many diaper changings. I guess I better get used to it. She lay back and started looking around. Soon she began staring at the ceiling directly over her head and noticed the small glow-in-the-dark stars she had put up last year. It was the first time in a long time she had seen them without it being dark. She only sort of vaguely noticed her mother undoing her wet diaper. Shirley quickly began taping Julia's diaper. Once it was untapped, she left it in place and grabbed the clean diaper from Julia's chest. She noticed her daughter staring at the ceiling. What you looking at, honey? Shirley asked as she opened the backside of the clean diaper. She grabbed Julia's legs with one hand and lifted her bottom up. With her other hand she slid the clean diaper under Julia. This was a little trick she had remembered from Julia's younger days, always put down a clean diaper before the dirty one came off. I was just looking at the stars on my ceiling. I hadn't seen them in the light in a long time, Julia said as her mother lifted her legs up again and removed her wet diaper. Her mother put her back down and left her uncovered. That's funny, Shirley said as she rolled up the wet diaper and tossed it in the diaper pail. You used to always stare at the ceiling when I changed you. But there were no stars back then. Shirley opened the box of baby wipes and took out a couple. She started to wipe Julia's bottom off, but as soon as the wipe touched Julia's skin, her daughter let out a gasp. Oh my gosh, that's cold, Julia exclaimed as she looked at her mother with wide open eyes. Sorry about that. Let me warm it up on your calf, it's not nearly as sensitive. 5 seconds later Shirley started again. Better, she asked. Much better, yeah, Julia said. Shirley quickly wiped Julia down. She put the box of wipes away and took out the nursery cream. She began putting it on and Julia started laughing. Oh my gosh, mother, it tickles even worse than before, Julia squealed. Well, sorry, but I am not stopping, Shirley said as she continued her work. I assure you that you really want me to use this stuff. Try to hold still, please. Julia did her best not to squirm, but it took real effort. Soon enough, her mother stopped and put the cream back on the shelf under the changing table. Then she grabbed the baby powder and sprinkled some on. Julia started looking at the stars on the ceiling again. Her mother set down the baby powder and then pulled the diaper up and spread it out over her lower tummy. She spread the front sides and then held it in place with one hand while the other hand grabbed the back of the diaper. Julia heard a loud tearing sound as her mother opened the tape and fastened down the left side of the diaper. Then she felt her mother gently pull the front of the diaper to the right. She heard the other tape open and felt the diaper tighten around her as her mother pulled the side to the front and firmly taped it in place. With a quick motion, Shirley ran her fingers underneath the leg openings and along the sides to smooth out in bunches. How's that feel? Shirley asked. Julia immediately noticed how different it felt to be back in a dry diaper. This once seemed a bit more snug than last time, which made it feel even better. Perfect, mother, Julia said as she glanced down at the white diaper between her legs. It seems to feel a tiny bit better actually. Like it fits better than the last one or something. Well, I am a little out of practice when it comes to diapering you, so I am not surprised to hear that. But it's starting to come back by tomorrow, and I imagine this will become routine for me again. Well, you're all set. I need to get back to the kitchen and make sure nothing is burning. Why don't you come down and set the table for me? Sure, Mother, Julia remarked as she hopped down from the changing table. Shirley had just about made it to the door when Julia asked her a question. Mother, can I put my pants back on now? Or do I have to go around in just a diaper still? Shirley looked at her daughter and paused to think. Well, honey, part of it is that I need to remember to check your diaper, and seeing it really helps. And honestly, it's really hard to check your diaper when you are wearing pants. They are too tight to really be able to check you like I need to, and you can't take them on and off easily, so I'd really prefer it if you didn't wear them. Well, what if I wear something like some boxers? Julia suggested. They are loose and stretchy enough that it shouldn't be a problem to check me. And if you need to take them off, it only takes a second. That's not a bad idea, honey. Shirley stopped and thought for a second. Tell you what, for the time being, let's stick with just diapers. Give me a day or two to get used to you being in diapers again and having to check you, and then we can see about some boxers. Okay. Julia let out a sign. It was better than nothing. Okay. Julia's diaper crinkled loudly as the two of them walked back to the kitchen. Julia started to set the table as her mother checked on the progress of dinner. By the time Julia finished setting the table, Ted had finished mowing the lawn and came back inside. Julia started to get a bit nervous. She suddenly felt extremely self-conscious about wearing just a diaper. What would her dad say? When Julia got down to the kitchen, her dad was there washing his hands. From the looks of him, he had just finished mowing the grass. He saw Julia come in. Hey there, kiddo, how did the speech go today? Julia wondered how he was going to react to seeing her wearing just her shirt and diaper, but he seemed to be acting like nothing was out of the ordinary. It went fine, Dad. Well, looks like you and Mother talked this morning. Guess I'll need to remember to check your diaper from time to time. Ted said, as if talking about the weather. Julia realized that this was the first time her dad had said anything at all about this whole little diaper experiment she had started. She was partly astonished and partly relieved to note that he had just said that with his normal matter-of-factness. Julia was about to answer, when her mother beat her to it. You and me both, Honorable. I just changed her though, so she should be okay until bedtime, I think. Dinner is just about ready, so why don't you two wash up and sit down? Julia and her dad did just that. She still felt a bit awkward wandering around the house in her diaper. This diaper seemed to crinkle even more than the last one. A few minutes later they were all sitting down. After dinner, Julia headed up to her room to start working on her homework. She plowed through her biology chapter, and then started the small math assignment she had. She was about halfway done when she remembered to call Becky. Julia got up and walked over to the phone. On the way, she noticed that she needed to go to the bathroom. She naturally started walking in that direction and made it about 5 steps before she remembered. She stopped dead in her tracks as her memory told her, I'm not allowed to go there. It was a very strange feeling indeed. Julia needed to go to the bathroom, and it wasn't to pee. She looked again at the bathroom. Then she turned and looked back to her room. Julia suddenly started to worry. After another moment, she turned around and walked back into her room, closing the door behind her. She started wondering what she had done. The need to go began to build. She started pacing the room, not sure what to do. She saw the phone and decided to call Becky. She was stalling, and she knew it. Becky picked right up. The two of them chatted for a few minutes, and then got down to business. Becky and Julia had a long agreement. Julia helped Becky with math, and Becky would help Julia with English. It worked out really well, as they each had their strong points academically. Unfortunately for Julia, Becky didn't need much help tonight. Sooner than Julia had hoped for, Becky said goodnight and hung up. Julia found herself alone in her room again, needing to go more than when she had started talking to Becky. She sat down on her bed. She knew what had to happen, but couldn't believe that she had to do it. Julia started to wonder if she might have made a big mistake. It was bad enough to have to wet your pants, but what about? Why didn't I think about this? Julia thought to herself. She had intentionally pushed the idea from her mind when her mother had laid down the rules. Why do I always ignore the bad things? She asked herself. I can't believe I am going to have to. The thought was so strange, so crazy that Julia couldn't even bring herself to say it to herself. But she knew all too well that it wasn't going to go away. There's no way. I couldn't actually. Again she found herself unable to say it. Julia started to get really worried. Her stomach started doing flips and she finally realized she was breathing really quickly. Okay, get a hold of yourself already, she thought. She stood up and took a long breath. She took another and started trying to think positively. Okay, what's done is done, Julia thought to herself. She started actually talking, muttering really, to herself. I should have thought about this, but I didn't and, well, now it's too late. So what am I going to do, freak out about it? No. No, that's not going to help. What does Dad say about this stuff? Learn to accept the consequences of your actions. Well, I know what has to happen, and it's not like I can put it off forever. Julia took a look at the clock, and saw that it was already 9 o'clock. Her parents would be going to bed soon. Her mother had told her dad that she should be okay until bedtime, so that probably meant that somebody would check her diaper before they went to sleep. Well, in that case, I would be better off going now. I mean, I don't want to go after they check me and head to bed. In Julia's mind a little trail started taking place. On the one side was some years of potty training and avoiding accidents, combined with the horror related to the thought of actually doing it. On the other side her body was telling her that she really needed to go, and the unquestionable logic that if she was going to go it was better to go now, followed by the simple and undisputable fact that she didn't have a choice anyhow. When she realized that it was not a matter of if but when, the trail ended. The jury returned a unanimous verdict in favor of the only real option. Julia took a deep breath and finally managed to say it. I'm going to have to just poop my pants. Just saying it seemed to help a tiny bit. She tried again, that's it, I'll just poop my pants. Julia took a deep breath and continued muttering to herself again. Poop my diaper actually. Julia corrected herself. Good point. I am not wearing any pants. I'm wearing a diaper, and people expect you to poop in your diaper. Heck, I don't even have a choice really. There was no denying that much was true. It's not like I'm about to ruin my favorite pants or do anything wrong or bad, she thought to herself as she turned and looked at the girl wearing a diaper in the mirror. She signed and accepted her fate. All right. No sense in waiting, let's get it over with. Julia actually realized that she couldn't hold back much longer anyway. If she hadn't been wearing a diaper, she would be pretty much running for a bathroom by now. She took a deep breath and tried to think how to best go about this. Should she sit down like she was on the toilet? She looked at her desk chair. It only took 2 seconds before she realized that wouldn't really work. She turned around and saw her changing station. Seeing the stacks of clean diapers helped her remember that dirty diapers all eventually get changed, and clean ones get put on. Maybe this wasn't as big of a deal as she was making it out to be. She decided to just do it right there. And so, standing there in her room, looking at her new changing station, Julia filled her diaper for the first time in well over a decade. She had no idea what to expect, but even still, the sensation surprised her. That same surreal detached feeling came over her as things started happening. It seemed as if someone placed a balloon in her diaper and slowly inflated it. The balloon started off very small, and then began to push against her diaper. When the diaper ran out of room, the balloon began to force her cheeks apart slightly. The balloon grew quickly, spread out over part of her bottom and then stopped. Julia felt a lot better. First and foremost, the need was gone. But perhaps more importantly, it had not been as bad as she thought it was going to be. In fact, she thought it really wasn't that big of a deal at all. With everything finally finished, Julia come out of her fog, and she realized that she was standing in the middle of her room. She still had a couple of math problems left. She tried to walk over to her desk. The load in her diaper felt a bit awkward, and she kind of waddled. When she got there, she realized that sitting down wasn't going to be a good idea. She decided to try lying down on her bed, so she grabbed her book and waddled over. She managed to lie down on her stomach without any problems, but found that she needed to spread her legs apart a bit to get comfortable. "I just hope somebody checks my diaper soon," she said as she tired to get back into her math assignment. Luckily for Julia, about 15 minutes later her mother opened the door and walked in. Julia looked up from her math book and was about to say that she needed to be changed, when she remembered what her mother had said earlier. She kept quiet. Shirley had been planning on checking her daughter's diaper. She would be heading for bed soon, and she wanted to make sure Julia's diaper was clean before she did so. "Hey honey," Shirley said as she walked over to the bed. "I'm going to head for bed soon, so I just wanted to check you diaper one last time." She was about to put her hand on Julia's bottom to check, when she realized that wouldn't be necessary. Shirley knew a dirty diaper when she smelled one. "Uh-oh," Shirley said in a tone Julia hadn't heard her mother use since her cousins had visited. "I think I smell a dirty diaper. Did somebody poop their pants?" Shirley looked at Julia and waited for an answer. Julia was a bit surprised to hear her mother talk to her like that. It took her a few seconds before she figured out that her mother was waiting for her to answer the question, and then another few to figure out what to say. Yeah, I did," Julia finally managed. "Well," Shirley continued in the same cooing tone, "that's okay honey. Good thing you're wearing a diaper, or you might have made a real mess." She paused, then walked over to the changing and patted the plastic-covered mattress. "Let get you changed. Come on, hop up." Julia slowly got up and waddled to the changing table. Why was her mother talking to her like she was little, and what was she talking about with this whole real mess thing? Her mother made it sound like she would have pooped herself even if she wasn't wearing a diaper. She hopped up and proceeded to lie down. Her mother grabbed the baby wipes, set them down next to Julia's stomach, and started taking off the tapes of her diaper. Then a baby wipe came out and did some work. Suddenly, everything stopped. "You know what, honey?" Shirley asked, using her normal voice again. "Why don't you hop in the shower real quick? It's really better for you to wash off. We don't want you getting a diaper rash." Julia hopped down from the changing station and headed for the shower. She normally showered before she went to bed, so this was pretty much the same as any other night. As she was showering off, she heard a toilet flush from her mother and her dirty diaper. As her mother walked by on the way out of the bathroom, she said, "When you finish your shower, brush your teeth and then I'll come back up and get you diapered and ready for bed." Julia never liked long showers, and about 10 minutes later she found herself on her back, staring at the small glow in the dark stars on the ceiling while her mother diapered her. Shirley had put an extra thick layer of nursery jelly, saying it was important since her diaper might be wet for a while during the night. Julia stopped staring at the stars and looked down. When the tapes were all fastened, as she did this, she looked at Julia and said, "Just making sure the leg gatherers are facing the right way. We don't want you to leak during the night." Julia was about to get up, but before she started to move, her mother asked her another question. "Which pajamas do you want tonight? Penguins or cows?" Julia wasn't a crazy fashion girl, but she did take great pride in her collection of pajamas. She loved wearing them, and always picked out the cutest patterns she could find. Julia preferred the two-piece sets. She never really liked wearing knitties. They were all of a soft cotton or flannel material that felt extra snuggly on cold mornings. Usually they were some pastel color, typically pink or blue but sometimes yellow or even white, and they always had some kind of cute animal too. Her current favorites were a blue pair with ice skating penguins, and a pink set with dancing cows. Penguins, Julia said, sounding more like an excited younger one than herself. Shirley turned around and opened the top drawer of the dresser. She fished around for a second and then pulled out the pajamas. She slipped the pants over Julia's feet and pulled them up and then over the diaper. Then Shirley handed the top to Julia. "I only handle the pants. You're in charge from the waist up," she said with a wink. Julia sat up on the crinkling plastic changing pad and slipped off her shirt. She pulled the pajama top over her head and hopped down to the ground. Her diaper came up past the top of her pajama pants, and the top didn't come down much farther than her belly. As such, there was about an inch of white diaper that was there for all to see. Shirley took a look at her daughter and said to herself, Julia still looked like a really cute toddler. The diaper didn't even seem all that out of place with the pajamas. She reached down and firmly patted her daughter's diapered behind. "Night, sweetie. I'll be sure to check your diaper in the morning, and I expect it to be wet. I know you usually use the bathroom in the night, so just go ahead. I don't want you getting sick 'cause you tried to hold it too long." Julia knew her mother was right. She had had problems wetting the bed when she was younger. It wasn't until she learned to wake up in the night that she managed to stay dry. "Okay, Mother, I will. Night, sweetie, I love you," Shirley said as she closed the door. Julia took a look at the clock and decided to head for bed. The couple of math problems left could wait until class the next day. As she went to turn out the light, she stole a glance at herself in the mirror. The pajamas looked ever cuter with her diaper showing, she decided. She turned and looked at herself from the back. Her bottom did look a bit bigger, but the top of her diaper made it obvious why. "Much cuter," she said to herself as she turned out the light. Julia's diaper crinkled loudly as she walked to bed and climbed in. As she lay there, she noticed how the diaper felt snug and secure. Her last thoughts as she drifted to sleep were of the glowing stars on the ceiling.